Welcome back to the podcast. It's up in the blue seats from the New York Post. I'm your host, Andrew Harts. And as always, we're joined by former Ranger, great Brian Boyle. And of course, from the New York Post, great Larry Brooks. Molly's off this week. She's traveling. She's flying. She's back on the grind. She's doing her thing. So we're giving her the bye week because the Rangers had the bye week last week. So it's her turn now. But listen, Ranger fans, gonna pour a little cold water on you. The streak is over. The 10-0-1 point streak, 11 game point streak, it's done. Our Temi streak is done. But that doesn't mean things are bad. And, they were due for a game like this against the Stars, a 6-3 loss. And, it looks a little more ugly than it should because of the two empty net goals. But, the Rangers aren't going to win every game this year. It's the first time they've lost in regulation since Nashville back on October 19th. So it's been a while. They were due. But listen, we'll get into it now. We have plenty to discuss. We'll start with you, Brian. Last night, the Rangers obviously didn't get the win. They came out strong 2-0. Kako had a goal. Trochi another goal. His streak is looking pretty good as well, too. The Rangers were just due for a loss like that, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're due, and I like their mindset that they're going out and trying to win every game. Look, that's not an easy place to play. I'll say that. Like, there's different for me, anyways. There's different places that are just they present themselves differently, whether it's sight lines or the color scheme. That it sounds kind of silly, I'm sure, but it does. It has an effect, and the way the Stars are playing this year, that's a great measuring stick. Now, listen, you look at the clippings or the headlines, like, they didn't play Ottinger. You're going in there, you have a chance to beat their backup goalie, quote unquote backup goalie. Well, he's their backup goalie, Wedgwood, who's played really well. I think he's got 4 wins or something in 5 starts. But it's, you know what? You got to look at some positives, right? There was a couple, empty netters. But when I was talking about the sight lines, I'm looking at like watching Panarin, right? And he's getting some looks, especially on the power play, and a puck sails wide, or he missed the net a little bit. It was like, ice surfaces are different. The all the rinks are the same size, obviously, but there's the glass is different. People might not realize that. Different bounces, different. The boards are always different. There's different things that might not matter to a lot of people. They matter to those guys who are used to a certain level of consistency. And look, I'm not making an excuse. He had his looks, he had his chances, and you got to adjust and adapt. But I like the fact that he got his looks, had some chances to score, was creating on himself, was shooting the puck. I'm talking about Panarin, obviously. And yeah, it was a close game. It wasn't 6-3. There's 2 empty net goals. You can look at Gustafsson, who kind of dished one to the middle for that first empty netter, but he's trying to make a play. He's trying to, there's not a whole lot to lose there. Another goal against doesn't matter. If you have a risk to try and create some offense, it's worth the play. It's worth the risk at that point in the game. So I don't get hung up on those things. I think he's been a big part with Fox being out. I liked a lot of things I saw. Kind of some weird bounces, some weird things, pucks going in the net. It was a gritty game.
I thought they played well for 28, 32, 33, 34 minutes. Dallas by far the best team they played this year. They haven't played. Listen, you play who's on the schedule, and I'm not diminishing their record. They have beaten everybody they've played. Other than the 2 losses before last night. So you go out on the West Coast, you win 5 straight. What could have been a very difficult trip early, they turned into a positive, and they created momentum off that. But they weren't playing very good teams out there either, and they beat Carolina at the Garden in a tough game. So yes, that's the best team they had played, and they beat them. Saturday night in New Jersey, I don't care. That's always going to be a hard game.
Oh yeah,
Ranger Devils games, Rangers Flyers games, Rangers Penguins games. They're always going to be hard games. So that was a challenge. They passed it, and I think they were looking forward to last night to measure themselves against one of the best 3-4 teams in the league, and they stood up well for, I'd say, a little more than half the game, maybe even a little bit deeper than that. But I didn't think they were able to match Dallas's speed for 60 minutes. I didn't think they were able to match Dallas's maybe intensity for 60 minutes. And I certainly didn't think I didn't think they played well enough in front of their own net. And I'm not sure if they played, I don't think they control the net fronts. They just didn't last night. That was part of it. And, so they lost the game. I don't think Igor has been as sharp in his 2 games coming back. He was off a couple of weeks. Okay, that's fine. I'm really curious to see what Peter does about his goaltending now, with 3 coming up in 4 nights, or even 4 days, right? 3.5, because they play Wednesday night in Pittsburgh, and then Friday afternoon in Philly, and Saturday afternoon at home against Boston. It'll be interesting for me to see how he goes with Quick and Igor. Will he go with Quick in Pittsburgh? I think probably, to guess, but I think probably.
Yeah.
And then he'll split the games on Friday, Saturday. So who gets Boston at home, and who gets Philly, and there. They have some things to clean up. I think it's disappointing, though, that they didn't quite stay with Dallas, especially when they had such a good first period.
Well, look at Ben's reaction after he scores. And you get that throughout the course of a season, right? And the coach comes in the locker room. We got to match their intensity. Like, looked like his first goal he ever got.
Yeah,
that game meant something.
Yeah. It was a confrontation between 2 of the best teams in the league, and Dallas won it. I think, again, when you win as regularly, and you can talk to this better than I can. When you win regularly, issues don't necessarily become issues. They're just, they're winning anyway. They're doing this, they're doing that. But then even when you have one loss, you take a look and say, well, they're not going to win consistently unless they get something from Zibanejad 5-on-5. They're just not. And then you start to pick and say, well, they're not going to do this. They're not going to keep winning if this. But to me, that's I think they certainly need to get more out of Kako. And last night, maybe that's a start for him. He scores the kind of fluky goal.
Right.
But they're not going to be able to win consistently and win against the best teams in the league if they're getting essentially no production at 5-on-5 from Zibanejad and Kreider, and they're not. That line, they're responsible defensively. They're not on the ice for goals against, and Mika has, I think, the best plus minus on the team. He's only been on for 3 goals against all year, but he's only been on for 5-on-5 goals all year. He's only been on for 5-on-5 goals in 16 games. And, his shot is way off. I mean, he is missing the net, both on the power play and 5-on-5. So there's something. I mean, this isn't new for him either. So, I should say that he has gone through extended stretches through his career where he'll go 10, 15 games maybe without a 5-on-5 goal. But he needs to correct this. They need him.
Well,
I just had the housekeeping coming in. Supposed to be checking out.
You never know what you're gonna say.
I'm on board with you. But here's the thing, which is great in November, right, Larry? Like, it's great to play good teams and figure out what you have and what you need to address. And, you see it. And I think more is made of this, like, President's Trophy curse than people realize. But I do agree, like, you lose a game in the playoffs after you run through the whole schedule all season long, and you're kind of like, it's all right. And then you lose 2 and you kind of panic. And it's like, well, how do we dig ourselves out? Because we haven't had to do that. This is a great way. Small details matter, especially when you're playing good teams, and good teams that are emotionally invested. Now, you can't fake being emotionally invested, and you try to. And believe me, when you're on the road or you play a lot of games, which they haven't, but they've been rolling. When you play a lot of games and you're like, we got to get up for this one. This is going to be a test. And the other team's just been sitting there like licking their chops, waiting to see like where they measure up against you. You know, if you don't have it that night, it's one night and you can move on. But that feeling when you get back on the bus because you're on the road, it's different than it's been for a while. And you're like, okay, we got to figure this out.
Well, so
what
that's
just happened?
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing now because again, they had their quote unquote bye week last week because of the way the schedule's made, but they're in the stretch of this 9 games in 16 days, where you have the Penguins, the Flyers, the Bruins, the Sabres, and then the Red Wings, you know, all within that span. And it's like you said, like this is the stretch that I feel is going to really show who this Ranger team is at this point. Because
Well, I think it's instructive. I
Yeah.
don't think it's this. I don't think whatever happens here is this positive.
Right. No, no,
I
no.
I don't think anything's going to be settled.
No.
But I think it's going to be instructive for the Rangers.
Yeah.
I think it comes at a great time.
Yeah.
I think that they needed a challenge. They
This
need
is
to be
it.
challenged. The front office needs to see, the coaching staff needs to see, and the players need to understand what they are, right? So I think this is a great week for them, however it turns out.
Yeah.
That they are facing really one challenge after another. They passed it in New Jersey, didn't quite in Dallas.
Right.
Now they go against it's always hard playing against Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Torts guy has the Flyers playing very, very well.
Oh yeah. Does he ever?
They're a tough team. And then of course
some saves too.
Then and Carter Hart's back, and he's they're a tough team. I mean they've inserted themselves into the playoff conversation.
Yep.
No doubt about it. And
were they second?
They're second.
Second in the Metro.
21 points.
I mean, it's logjam, but still.
I just think that you'll take all the information, all the raw material you get out of this week, and then you'll be able to have a little bit better perspective, and you'll just have more data. You'll have more information about how guys respond and how they play in difficult situations and when they're challenged. So I think this is a big week. I think. But again, no matter how you slice it, they're going to need production from Zibanejad and Kreider, especially when you take a look now without Hedel, what their third line, what their bottom six kind of is. And the bottom, VC scored twice in New Jersey, and Goodrow scored the last goal last night. So they've gotten a couple of goals from the fourth line. But they're not built to get a lot now from their bottom six. They're built with their top six and their power play. And when it was interesting, their power play last night was they passed the puck around, they held the puck.
Dallas doesn't give you anything through the middle though.
Yeah, there was nothing. And
number two in the league, I think.
So again, when as the Rangers are constructed, if they don't score in the power play, and they're not, their top six isn't rolling, they're going to have a tough time. Yet, it's a 1-goal game against Dallas basically until the end. And so again, no panic, no need, but interesting.
I'll say this quick. I'll say this about I got to see Jimmy Vesey last week, and I was really happy for him and his goals, and they were good goals last week. Against the Devils, right? And then I know it doesn't mean anything, but Barclay Goodrow getting one at the end,
getting off the schneid,
could mean something for him.
Yeah.
So you try to take, you get another shift. Doesn't matter, the game's over, but it's a shift in the NHL, and he went out and got a goal. No celebration, but that could mean something too. You're not going to score. Your bottom six can't score every single game, but hopefully they're starting to figure out their role. It's a new coach, and when you get less minutes, it sometimes takes a little bit of time to adjust to that and figure out exactly, all right, when's he going to need me? And then you kind of know, you start to get the feel of the game and what the coach reads.
And you know what, too? I mean, their structure has changed because they were built to be a kind of 3-line scoring team, right?
Yep.
With Hedel, who's going to be the second-line center, and Trocheck is obviously an offensive guy who is playing in that third line spot to open the season. So they were coming at you with a top 9.
Right.
Now they're coming at you with the top 6. I mean,
Doesn't work anymore.
Everything Nick Bonino is, he's not a, he's
Right.
not an offense driver. He's not going to drive offense as a third line center, right? So they're a little bit different. They need, they need to figure it out a little bit differently. They never, and maybe part of this is because of the contracts they were locked into and the cap, but they haven't had a shutdown line in a long time. And instead they opted to be a top 9 team, 3 scoring lines. And even, last year, of course, with the kids on it, that was all right. This is our third line, but this is a scoring line. We want,
right.
this. They come in this year. They switch a couple of things around, but the third line with Trocheck is still a scoring line. Now it's not, so they have to try and figure that out a little bit too. I also think too, it's interesting. Again, I don't think they controlled the front of the net very well last night. I think Igor's leaving more pucks around than normal. So okay. But I was thinking of Zadorov in Calgary.
Ooh, yes.
But there's no there. Let's forget about the cap space. Let's say the Rangers could maneuver to get him.
Not a huge number,
but he's not. But where's he playing? I mean, they're not sitting Gustafsson, right? I mean, when Fox comes back, Gustafsson goes back to the left side, so they're set up right now too, without a big bruiser back on that left side on D, which they've always looked for, but now with Gustafsson there, it changes it. So that's something else. I was just thinking about that. With Zadorov, he's the kind of guy I think the Rangers could use. I think a lot of teams could use him as a third pair guy. Certainly valuable when you get to the playoffs. I think that kind of style. But the Rangers right now don't have spot for him.
11-7, Larry.
What's that?
There's no rule against dressing 7D.
No, there's not.
I like the way you think, Larry. That's an interesting. No, but what would a situation look like be to acquire him though? Like in terms of pieces, the Rangers would have to give up.
But again, I don't see where he plays. I mean, I don't think they're going 11-7 all year.
No.
So there's just no spot for him. There's just no spot for him, unless you're saying, we're going to change our team entirely. We're going to trade one of our defensemen,
which you're not going to mess with the mojo right now, the way they're playing. Clearly,
I don't think.
Well, but it's big boy hockey in the West.
It's true.
They just won a cup that way.
Yeah.
That's
and and each year, when they lost to when the Rangers lost to Tampa 2 years ago in the conference finals, I thought that the difference was was net front. Tampa was you couldn't get to the front against Tampa. I mean, Ryan McDonough was there. I mean, you couldn't get there, and Tampa just got there at basically whenever they wanted to. I mean, their fourth line and their third line. So you go into the next off season and say, well, they need to improve there, but they really don't look at they didn't really, and so they're trying to win slightly differently. They're trying to win with more skill. See how that works out. I mean, there's 7 months until we find out.
Yeah, you can address it in house too. You can. It's an attitude. You can't. Yeah, because I guess they had McDonough and Chernak and excuse me. I mean, even Sergachev's a big, strong guy. Hedman, they had big guys. I mean,
Vegas just couldn't get to the front.
Vegas just put on a clinic last year.
Yeah,
with gritty forwards against. They didn't let anyone near their net.
I understand why Tampa had to make the move for the salary cap reason, letting McDonough go last year. I kind of get it, but I also didn't. He was so good.
He couldn't get through.
He could not get.
He was an octopus when you try to shoot on the power play. I don't know how he blocked everything with any sort of limb he had. Yeah. I mean, he is underappreciated still. they miss him in Nashville right now. Him and Shen being out, but it is how it always was. It is in the playoffs. It's big boy hockey. It's defending. It's not giving anything up, and you control it however you can. We lost to the Kings that way. When we were in New York, it's just how it goes. We couldn't get around the net against the Devils in 12 in the conference finals. Like that's all it is. That's all it is. It doesn't change ever. And the regular season changes and different lineups change and different, what could get you there might change sometimes. And getting to the playoffs is very important for general managers because the owners are happy. But at a certain point when you're close, a piece here or there might help you win. And it might not be the sexiest pickup, but the value is. So that's why Zadorov to me is interesting. But he also is an enigma sometimes defensively.
Right.
So it's why he's this big guy who gets 14 goals in a season and
right.
He might be on the block and he's not locked up for 8 years. So,
right.
There's a lot to it. I think they have time to figure it out. And again, it is an attitude of like, this is our area. You can't come in here.
Well, that was a big reason why they brought in Ryan Reeves a couple years ago too, to be more physical, to kind of be a little bit more of an enforcer. I see that out of Trouba right now, and
you're on. That's more closer to it. Like Revo would get you more space for some of the forwards, like Lafreniere. I've said it a few times.
Yeah,
played different with him in the lineup, which is why you get him, which is why he's worth the price of admission, even if he's not necessarily going and punching faces.
Yep,
he'll yap at you. Guys will think twice. But when you're trying to go to the net and you're just wearing it, especially in a series, you're just wearing cross checks and you're wearing so even when you don't have the puck, you're getting bumped. Like that's the attitude I'm talking about.
It'll be much needed, and we'll see that coming down the stretch here. Larry, you kind of did a good job talking Ranger fans down from the ledge a little bit, considering the loss last night. But I guess out of both of you guys here, what do you consider a successful week looking ahead now? Because again, we're in the trenches now. This is the start of it. I'm worried.
Losing 3. Not losing the next 3.
Well, that's because I'm worried about what Brian said a little earlier, where how you lose one game and then it's like, all right, well, and then you lose the next game, and then things could start to tumble here a little bit. And the Rangers have done a good job building up their lead in the division. Granted, again, it's early, means absolutely nothing, but I do worry about, because like I said, Penguins play hard, Flyers are good, Boston's one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league. Things could turn by the next time we have a show next week.
Yeah, well, it's going to be fun. I think I'm not going to try to speak for Larry, but if you get some looks, some production, or some, driving play where that top line at 5-on-5 can be a weapon, can be a threat, is controlling, the game and offensively just trying to make plays and creating. You could run into a hot goalie, whatever it is. Each game's different, but in terms of just the foundation of your team and how you set out to build them, if the top line's driving play, getting chances, the power play looks good, getting chances, keeping momentum, and then cleaning up the things around the net front that they got a little bit exposed to, like that, and bring that emotional investment, right? They don't have 6 losses. They have 2. And that's a great place to be, especially with a tough stretch coming up. But it's great to have challenges.
It'll be an interesting stretch ahead. We'll see how the Rangers do. Again, don't panic. We have a Larry Brooks here to talk you off the ledge. One last thing from the Dallas game, and Brian, I'm kind of curious how you as a player takes this, if it matters at all to you. Molly tweeted after the game last night in Dallas that the American Airlines Arena played. But Molly, someone, Molly, I don't know. She's here, but she's not here. They played the Frank Sinatra classic theme from New York, New York, following the Rangers' defeat. And I'm not sure if that got back to the players at all, but just noting that the Rangers played Dallas on February 20th. Does that something like that bother you as a player, knowing that they're kind of trolling you like that?
No, come on. Poor Molly, just dealing with planes, trains, and automobiles, by the way. We miss you, Molly. Anyways, that's for the fans to get all bent out of shape about, which I think is great. Like, and you see it more with these mascots and these teams tweeting stuff out. I think it's like when people they lose their minds over it. It's pretty funny. But if it's brought to your attention as a player, you remember it. I remember just like playing against Detroit in the playoffs when I was at Tampa. They throw that octopus, and it took everything in me not to take it, throw it back at the guy that threw it down. Like we beat him in a series, and I just was giving it to him on the way out. Some unsavory words, and I had no issues yelling at grown men who were fans yelling at me. No issue at all. None. There's other stories, but we'll save them.
Ooh, that's what we call in the business a tease right there.
Yeah.
Well, we'll take a look at the rest of the podcast. It's coming up next. We're gonna be discussing some Thanksgiving memories. Back on the podcast here with Brian Boyle, Larry Brooks. Thanksgiving's on Thursday, folks. You know, obviously, Brian, you've had a lot of time on the road. You've had some interesting, different kind of Thanksgivings. Any sort of memories come to mind when I say either playing on Thanksgiving or I mean, it's a Canada sport. I mean, Canada doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving, so it's kind of weird. But like, did you have any weird kind of memories celebrating Thanksgiving on the road with the team?
Can I jump in? I just remembered this. So it was I think this was my first year. I was covering the Islanders, and I'm pretty sure it was my first year. They had a game on Thanksgiving at home at the Coliseum. Pretty sure it was against Detroit. And I had my Thanksgiving, dinner with my parents, my sister, and all, and went out to the game. And they were the Islanders were a very good team, 76, 77. They were a very good team. They were young, building toward their dynasty, but they're a really good team. And they play that night. They got, they were awful. They lost to a bad Red Wings team. So Al Arbor comes out and he says, well, it's Thanksgiving and we were the turkeys. It was like, what is this? But that's my might not have been good enough to stop the show for Brian.
No, I love it.
I should have interrupted you.
No, I was just saying Larry had that Lou nugget. There's no
Lou.
Yeah.
No holidays in pro
Right.
sports.
I was actually working for the Devils at that point, and the Devils were in Minnesota playing the North Stars. They played at the old Metropolitan Arena in Bloomington. This was before the Bloomington Mall, and there was a motel hotel kind of right across the parking lot from the arena. There was nothing out there. It was, you're in Thanksgiving, and we're having a Thanksgiving meal, the team. And Lou stood up and announced, there are no holidays in pro spots. And there are no holidays in pro spots.
No. Even when there are, you just kind of have to rush through it a little bit, and your mind's on the game as an athlete. But
I don't think there were holidays at Providence either when Lou was there.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Do you know what we called their rink?
What?
They called their rink at Providence?
What?
The coffin.
Yeah.
It's dark, and
yeah.
it wasn't great. Yeah, we had a few meals where we'd get in, and whether it be the Wednesday if we played on Thursday, or if we played on the Friday afternoon, we'd have a Thanksgiving meal, and it wasn't home cooking. They did their best, and we got everything we needed to eat, and we're spoiled that way with food. But and you're with your buddies, and which is fun. But you miss everyone at home. You're doing the phone call before the FaceTime, and then FaceTime was around, so you get to try to catch up that way. And the great thing about the league, which I love, is 24, 25, and 26 of December are off.
Yeah,
which for the North American guys is great. If you're fortunate enough to get home, it really is special. But it is it's we're fortunate to play. There are sacrifices that you have to make, which is the way it is. But we had one lineup for me that was great. We had Boston at Boston on a Friday after Thanksgiving. So I got to go home and spend a lot of time with everybody, and then about 30 of them are coming to the game. Larry, you got to remember this one. 30 of them are coming to the game the next day. We go into Boston, we're playing, we're winning, and there's a delayed call against us in the second period. And we're winning this game. Boston's obviously a good team. And again, 30 people in my family are at this game. And there's a delayed call against us, and David Krejci cross-checks Taylor Pyatt into Hank, and there's no call. And we're going to the box, and I'm not happy. So I give Krejci a little cross-check, knowing full well Krejci's line mates are Milan Lucic and Jerome McGinley, and the D pair was Zdeno Chara and Adam Quaid.
Yeah, not bad. Not
So
bad.
in front of the net is me, Taylor Pyatt, who's inside the net with Hank inside the net on their butts, Mark Stahl, and pick two other guys, whoever it is. It's going to be me versus somebody. And I'm kind of quickly assessing, and Luch comes in first, and I said, I looked at him. I said, you saw what happened, and he let me go. And then McGinley's like poking me with a smile on his face. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll fight him. And someone grabbed him. And anyways, the scrum seemed to have calmed down. And then all of a sudden, I call it the hand of God. I get like horse collar from the back and pulled out, like almost lifted off my skates. And I felt like I was 10 again, and I did something wrong. And my dad was pulling me out of a pile. I'm like, what is going on? And I look back, and it's Big Z. So he gives me a little pop. So I punch him with a left because I'm holding my stick in my right hand. And then the C's part, and everyone gets out of the way. And I'm fighting Zdeno Chara with my stick in my hand still. And he is gloves off. And he cracks me with one. Felt like a baseball bat. And I'm like, oh my God. So I have to do something now. All these people are at the game. Fast forward, didn't go well for me. He falls on top of me, asks me if I'm okay. He goes, Brian, are you okay? Are you okay? I'm like, get off of me, please. And I took my helmet, I threw it against the glass. Anyways, they tied it up later, and then he scored. He had a Gordie Howe hat trick, was first star of the game, and I had to go up in front of my whole family. I'll never forget this. Glenn Sather walks into the locker room after the game. And he goes, look at you. You didn't even get cut. That's amazing. Great job. You didn't get cut. And I'm like, I just got embarrassed in front of everybody I know. Everybody. And then the people that weren't there were watching it on Nesson probably. And that was a tough day after Thanksgiving. But that's my Thanksgiving hockey memory. We lost.
They played another Friday after Thanksgiving there. There was a game where Bolesky cross-checked Step. It was late. He broke his ribs, and it was a late hit. There was no call on the play, and McElrath jumped in. McElrath fought Bolesky, and AV was coaching. It must have been.
I was gone.
Yeah, it might have been 14, 15.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been that year for maybe 15, 16, but so then they played then, and they didn't, it wasn't a home and home, but they were home on Saturday afternoon. And AV was kind of a pacifist. And he wasn't going to play McElrath in the Saturday afternoon game, but he was finally talked into it, I guess, by Glenn. There was always that line with tough guys on the Rangers when AV was coaching. It's like, do you go? Of course you should, but if you're not going to be backed up by the coach, and you can talk about what was the dynamic in the room when a guy did something that he knew he should have, that everybody on the team knew that he had done the right thing, but the coach might not have backed him up publicly for it.
It's so hard. Even if you're really tough, it doesn't seem like you're, fighting really affects you. It does. It's really difficult. I mean, we had a lot of brave guys in different ways, but that part of it where you're bare knuckle, and if you're not feeling appreciated, it's a really hard thing because your teammates will be there for you and express that. We had that with Prusty, who fought above his weight class all the time, but I thought he was appreciated for much of his time by the coaching staff. And he was an effective player as well. And what's going on here? And there were guys that came in that would fight these big, strong dudes. And because they were big, strong dudes, it was almost like, well, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. Well, no, it takes a lot. There's an emotional toll that it takes on guys, and that's well documented. And the players appreciate that so much. So when the guys are in and out and they feel like they're just kind of a piece of meat, yeah, I mean, that's not a great feeling, obviously, for the player, the individual, but also for kind of like, look at what he's putting himself through. He deserves a bone here. You got to toss him on it. Coaches that could do that really could figure out the room really well. And you understood that, nothing really is going to go unnoticed here.
Is that another point to someone like Jacob Trouba to what he does? Because I remember after, it was a few games ago where he kind of said, he's like, well, I guess I got to fight this guy, now. I'm not saying it sounded resentful in terms of like, he knows that he kind of bears the fruit of being the bruiser of the team. But do you kind of want to see other guys step up in that role just to kind of, take that load off his shoulder, having to not be that enforcer in those situations?
Yeah. I mean, it's like what I was saying before about the attitude in front of the net. It's the attitude as the team. Like if you give a guy a chop, or even if you're yapping and every line's got a guy that's doing that, you need more than half just to have a little chip on their shoulder. And sometimes you got to get into one, and there's ways you can mix it up and protect yourself as well. And everybody should kind of know how to do that. Like we were an agitating team in the, the 11 to 12, 13, 14 seasons. Like we were pain in the ass to play against. And because it was like, you get around our net, we'll mix it up. And nothing, 8 times out of 10, nothing comes from it. But guys were there. We're standing there. We're looking you in the eye. And if you don't get into it and you just kind of skate away, it's like, well, if I'm on the other team, like, we'll see how far I can push this, see how much I can get away with. And I remember as I got older in the league and I just started doing it a little more, kind of wanted somebody to come at me. And it was like, if they don't, I got a little more space. If they do, it's like, well, I should mix it up. I'm not doing a whole lot else here. I'm really on the power play. I might be on a penalty kill unit, but this might get the boys going a little bit. And that's just kind of how the league's evolved, and teams that still kind of do it. It's like other guys might just be like, I don't feel like it right now. That's why you see it in the playoffs where it's like, I got to step up. It's the emotions, everybody's invested emotionally.
Kind of just let it all out at that point. Well, We're all out of time here on the podcast, so we're going to wrap up the show next. Larry, Brian, hope you both have a happy Thanksgiving to your families. I'm glad you're not going to have Zdeno Chara pulling you out of the kitchen or anything like that, so that's encouraging. And stay tuned. Wrapping up the show next. And that'll put a bow on episode 133 of Up in the Blue Seats, our Rangers podcast from the New York Post. Before we leave, we got to dish out some stars here. Brian, who's your number one star of the week?
I got VC, Jimmy VC, who is give him a lot of credit. He's finding his way at a huge game against the Devils, couple goals. New coach comes in, different kind of role. He's figuring that out. He can be, I think he can be a weapon going forward on the bottom six. Don't expect 30 from him, but he's got that offensive ability, and he plays gritty.
It's also great to see him do it against his former team in the Devils.
Oh, yes.
You always love to see that. Number 2, I'm going to go with Troche, and he's now on a 6-game point streak. It's either second or third longest of his career. We want to see him stay hot. He's been hot, and it's exactly what the Rangers need, especially with some key pieces out. And I think Brian and I can both take the third star with Artemi Panarin breaking the record. Unfortunately, his record is now, that's it. It's over. But breaking the record for the most games scoring a point to start a season. Congratulations, Artemi. That's, he's on fire. And even though he said he had one off game, he'll bring it right back, I'm sure, at that point. Well, as always, many thanks to Jake Brown for producing the show. You can catch up on all episodes of the podcast by subscribing to Up in the Blue Seats on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching the show right now on the New York Post YouTube page, give us a thumbs up and comment back. What are you thankful for the Rangers this year? I mean, I'm thankful that they had they're off to a good start, I think, right, Brian?
Oh, yeah. Labby.
Oh, thankful for Labby. I like that. Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
buddy.
There you go. You can also follow us on Twitter, X, BryBrows22, and I am Andrew Harts without the E. So for Brian Boyle, Larry Brooks, myself, Andrew Harts, we're back next week with another episode of the podcast. Thanks for listening. Up in the Blue Seats. Have a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving. Take it easy, y'all. Later.